Good evening. My name's David Sidwick and I'm the Police and Crime Commissioner for Dorset, and I'd like to welcome you to this Facebook live event, specifically dealing with the issues of rural crime. Now, what I should do is frame the discussion. We are talking about the strategic partnerships and the strategy around rural crime, not actually individual cases. If we have any questions about those, then what we'll do is we'll take them offline. So I'm here with some guests, and they're members of what's called the Rural Crime Reduction Board. This is a new board I set up in order to address the issues of rural crime in Dorset. And it's across multi-partners. We have parish councils, we have local authorities, we have Historic England, Dorset Wildlife Trust, Cornish Mutual, NFU Mutual, the Environment Agency, Forestry England, basically stakeholders who all have an interest in the reduction of rural crime. So I'd like to introduce my guests. I'm joined by Chief Inspector Andy Edwards from Dorset Police and the Rural Crime Team. The Rural Crime Team tackles all aspects of rural, wildlife and heritage related crime. They work with rural communities to encourage better communication between victims and the police, and work with other forces and partners across the Southwest to fight organised crime in our rural communities. I'm also joined by Gemma Harvey from the National Farmers Union. The NFU represents more than 46,000 farming and growing businesses, states it is a champion of British agriculture and horticulture, and campaigns for a stable and sustainable future for British farmers. And my final guest is Sasha Chapman from Historic England. And Historic England is the government's statutory advisor on the historic environment, championing historic places and helping people to understand, value and care for them. The most historic places in England are listed, and on that list are buildings, battlefields, monuments, parks, gardens, shipwrecks and more. So those are the guests, and we look forward to answering your questions. So if I could have the first question up, please. As a farmer, what can I do to prevent thieves from targeting me and taking my machinery? I think what I will do is give Greg Stewart's question to Gemma Harvey first, and then Chief Inspector Andy Edwards.
Thank you very much, David, and thank you for having me this evening. So there are several measures that you can take and steps as a farmer to help protect yourself from becoming a victim of rural crime, particularly around your farm buildings, farmyards and your machinery. So ultimately, it's all about deterrence. making sure that your farm is as uninviting as possible to any would-be thieves. So really, we're looking at kind of making it as difficult as possible for anyone that happens upon your farm and your machinery to actually take that. So we're talking about kind of keeping your gates closed and, where possible, locking those gates to prevent access to farmyards. Then we think about farm buildings, making sure you've got doors where possible. Roller doors can be really key, with padlocks on those so they're locked overnight. And then kind of really simplistic things, but even little things make a huge difference. So making sure you're taking your keys out of your tractors and machinery overnight, so that if they are in the farmyard and they are visible, if thieves do try to access them, you're not making their lives easy in terms of taking easily removing that machine or that item. And then key things on access to your farm, thinking about having signs up just as a kind of the first stage of deterrence. You are being watched, fantastic signs to put up, followed up by CCTV to make sure that they know that they are on camera, and that is hopefully being stored somewhere. So CCTV that is being stored, and then also lighting as well, lights, camera, action to prevent those thieves.
Thank you, Gemma. Over to you, Andy.
Thank you, David. Yeah, Greg, you're exactly right. We do need to look at how we prevent crime and deter criminality, particularly in rural communities. I think, not to repeat what Gemma has said, but I think if removing farm machinery from fields overnight, making it a really difficult target for criminals to take property, because it's a lot of high value stuff, as we're aware. And we've had some instances recently where we've been seizing some high-value plant equipment, and then identifying that equipment and linking it back to a victim is really challenging for us. So any serial numbers you can take, photographs of your machinery is really useful. And immobilising and securing it, like Gemma said, taking the keys out, really important. And I think broader than that, maybe just considering, what's normal in your local community. So if you see things in your community, Greg, that are out of that aren't normal, they're not what you'd normally see. People hanging around a car up and down the road, up and down the tracks around the farm. Take a note of the registration number, report it to the police, because we can then build a picture of suspicious activity, and that allows us then to target our resources effectively in local communities. So that then adds to the whole prevention picture. So I think it's some really basic things like Gemma's alluded to around CCTV, quality lighting, but what's out of place in your local community is really important to us, and removing, the intended items that the criminals will want to take, really important.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So can I just remind everybody, if they've got a question for a member of the panel, can you just pop it in the comments? And we deal with as many as possible. So I've got another pre-submitted question now. Is heritage crime really that big an issue in Dorset? And what sort of crimes do people commit? That's from Helen Smith. Can I pass that over to you, Sasha?
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting us to be part of this event. So heritage crime is any offence that causes damage or loss to the historic environment. Dorset is very rich in its heritage, with scheduled sites, listed buildings, and protected wreck sites in its coastal waters. And so heritage crime could be off-roading, for example, on a scheduled monument, such as a place like Maiden Castle, metal detecting on a protected scheduled site, and also theft of lead from listed buildings is a particular problem with churches where lead is stolen off the roof. And also we have antisocial behaviour, which could be graffiti, but also just litter on some of these special protected places. Scheduled monuments are listed or are protected, and there is a list or schedule of monuments. And so to find out whether a site is protected, you can go onto the National Heritage List, which is online, and you can see if it's a protected site, whether it's listed or scheduled, and that gives it a special protection, and Historic England monitors these. And so we've been working with Dorset Police to sort of increase the profile of reporting, because often people see these things happening and aren't able to report it correctly. So we're working closely with the police and hopefully to highlight that this is an issue and that these places are very special and important. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you, Sasha. Keeping the beauty in Dorset, I would term what you do. Thank you very much indeed. Andy, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I think it'd be just useful just to highlight the work that we are doing. The rural crime team particularly have done around heritage crime. So I think there's three key things here. Really, we've mapped out across the force some heritage crime officers, and we've delivered training, and that has been really important and innovative. Really, working with Historic England, identifying some of those key aspects we need to understand in terms of our investigations and our evidence base, making sure we map that out properly across the force. So now we've got 17 trained heritage crime officers across the force, and that isn't just uniformed officers; it's CID officers, officers from our contact centre. So it's a wide range, and the breadth of knowledge is quite significant within Dorset Police. We're also looking to develop our watch schemes, our heritage watch schemes across the county. That is identifying people that live in the vicinity of heritage sites, and just to really identify some of those key issues around suspicious behaviour, how to report things quickly, and building up that network of community contacts, making sure that we're visible and connected in our local communities and working with the members of the public. And I think finally is working with Historic England around diversion tactics. So working with the partnership to look at people that are involved on the edge of criminality and looking at how we can divert them away from that behaviour to a better way of life and a more conducive way of being a member of the public.
Thank you, Andy. Just before we go to the next question, can I just remind you all that if you want to ask a question, please put it in the comments below. We'd like to get through as many as we can get through tonight. I'm very happy to go to live questions next if we've got some. Has rural crime increased recently? If so, why do you think this is? I'm going to hand that straight over to the people who have the numbers. That's to Chief Inspector Andy Edwards.
Okay, so I don't think rural crime has increased particularly recently, but I think there are a number of factors we need to consider when we're looking at crime trends and what we're doing about that. So if you consider some of the national issues, cost of living crisis, that may lend itself to an increase in acquisitive crime. So I think we need to consider some of those aspects around it and actually protect ourselves against it by strengthening our communities. So I think if any increase in crime is generally down to some kind of national or or regional kind of event. So we work closely with our partners in the region, tackling cross-border criminality, and we've had some really good successes around that. So I don't think it's increased recently, but actually I think there's a real potential for it because of the national picture. So I think we need to be aware of it and just take note of some of the crime prevention advice and try and target hard on our premises and make sure we're ready for any eventuality, protecting our communities in that respect.
So if I can add a little bit there, the last numbers that I saw were actually a reduction. What we'll do, Sue, is we'll get some numbers to you in order to be able to address that. So, Fee Stewart, what's being done about the prolific illegal fox hunting all over Dorset? So if I can say a couple of comments about this first. The issue of illegal fox hunting, any sort of hunting mammals with dogs, it is illegal. I expect the police to uphold the law in that regard. It is confused because of the legal trail hunting, which is allowed. Now, that's position. Andy, do you want to talk about what we're doing about it?
Yeah, again, I think it's really important. So, yeah, thanks for the question, Fee. So, I think the first thing is we understand completely the significant community concern this has in terms of fox hunting. I get letters about it very regular basis. We've also got to balance the organised hunts and the hunt monitors as well, the different views, and make sure we're impartial in what we do. And that is our one of our key aspects in this. So I think the important thing is, Fee, we are absolutely committed to investigating every single allegation of fox hunting. Now, most of the offences associated with fox hunting are not the actual hunting itself. They are the associated offences like criminal damage, assault, things that go on when the hunt's taking place. But we absolutely are committed to investigating breaches of the Hunting Act. I think secondly, we have identified a number of complexities around the investigation. So we know that some of the evidence is difficult. Some of the evidence can be inadmissible we receive. We do review it all and make sure where we're at. And we've got specialist lawyers in the CPS we speak to try and tackle that and bring people to justice where they're committing offences. What we've done in Dorset is, similar to heritage crime, we've mapped across the force wildlife crime officers. This is a bit more than just having a knowledge. This is accredited. These are properly accredited wildlife crime officers across the force, 17 of them, that have an uplift in their knowledge around hunting. And I produced recently a document or some guidance called Operation Graphite in the force, which gives some really clear guidance to people when they go to hunting and they're attending there on first call. So they'll turn up at the scene of a hunt and they will know what to look for. They'll know what to expect because it's a complex area of law that you probably appreciate. Police officers are not dealing with every day of the week. So it gives some real guidance around what to look for, what to evidence, what details to take, who to speak to, and just to get those points to prove actually in writing and secured. I think the final thing is we're looking at working with our partners in the council and the Crown Prosecution Service at looking at some civil orders to deter behaviour post-conviction. So where we do have a conviction for a fox hunting offence or any relevant offence, we will look at civil orders to deter behaviour which might be managing someone's behaviour in the community. So there's lots we are doing about it. We also work regionally with an operation called Operation Galileo, which is the national hare coursing operation, which we run events and we run activity. You may have seen it on Facebook on some of our rural live with Wiltshire Police, Gloucestershire Police, any of our regional forces tackling that cross-border in the rural isolated communities. So we do a lot around it. So we are tackling it, but there are some complexities with that.
So let's just be clear, Andy, this is new, the Operation Graphite, and the 17 extra wildlife officers which have been trained specifically about the issues around fox hunting and what to look for. Again, that's a new initiative from Dorset Police in order to tackle this issue.
That's correct, David. Yeah, it is. So just to reassure Fee, really, yes, that is new. In the last 3 months, we've got 17 extra accredited wildlife crime officers and Operation Graphite, which gives guidance to the control centre on first report of a hunt and associated offences, and then advice to responding officers who may not be their everyday role, but they will be the first at scene what to look for.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for that, Andy. And from my point of view on this particular issue, I'll be discussing it with the new Chief Constable who starts on March the 1st, because I am aware of the community interest in this specific area. So thank you for the question. Really good question, Fee. Okay, we've got a question from Jack Symes. What is being done to reduce the number of people fly tipping? I often see it on the way to work. So from the point of view of the broader context, the Rural Crime Reduction Board actually has as members the Environment Agency and the local authority. So we have much closer joined up working around fly tipping. One of the areas that I'm particularly keen about is the sanctions around it. there isn't that much difference between the cost of a skip and the fine, unfortunately. So what I've been able to do is to leverage the other police and crime commissioners in the Southwest. We've jointly written a letter lobbying for tougher sanctions and also more resources to go into the battle tackling fly tipping. As I say, that was 5 of us together. That's also been taken up by other police and crime commissioners, and that was sent into various people within the government, the Secretary of State for the Environment, for example, in order to try and drive greater focus on this area. I perfectly understand why it's distressing for people, and it needs a much greater focus. Andy, do you want to add anything to that?
I think, David, from the Rural Crime Reduction Board, that has been the big win in all of this. We've had some much closer joined up working with our council partners. The council lead on the fly tipping. However, the important thing is we've got powers under the fly tipping. If we identify, for example, vehicles that may have been used in a commission of offence, police officers can seize those vehicles, and that has a huge impact on people that commit that offence. So we do work with the council very closely on a regular basis. They're part of what we call our partnership coordination group, where we discuss key locations. We look at working with the council to target harden those key locations because it's very similar, often the same locations time and time again. And we know about the impact it has on the community. And I see it personally. I live in Dorset as well. And yes, it is a blight on our countryside. And actually, whatever we can do about it, we're committed to working with our council partners to do.
Brilliant, thank you. Can we go to the... So we've got a question here from Steve Pallant, which says they have no policy on illegal fox hunting. Watch to see how they totally ignore the hundreds of comments written here, sadly lacking. So I think we just addressed that. There is a clear policy on illegal fox hunting. Fox hunting in Dorset is not to be tolerated. The Dorset Police will uphold the law. And you heard about the new Operation Graphite, the 17 wildlife officers who will be supporting the rural crime team in order to address this issue. And the fact that we are looking at what to do with new civil orders, as well as the actual Hunting Act. Now, the issue is the level of evidence which is required in order to satisfy the Hunting Act. But that comment, I think, needs to be taken into the context of the information which was given a few minutes ago by myself and Chief Inspector Andy Edwards. So the next question is, I've heard that a lot of rural crime is linked to organised crime gangs. Is that true? And if so, how does that work? From Mark Taylor. So from my perspective, I first thought about organised crime in the context of hearing about a number of sheep being taken from a field, which isn't being stolen for a Sunday lunch and has to be shipped and taken somewhere for slaughter, which to me sounded like organised crime. And also when a tractor is stolen, you've got to have an outlet for that tractor, etc., etc., etc. So from a very common sense point of view, there seemed to be an element of organised crime. I'm very clear that the new strengthened rural crime team, one of their purposes is to address this. Andy, will you take the ball on from me and actually go further with that?
Yeah, certainly, David. Yeah, so good question, Mark. So rural crime is often linked to organised crime. We know that organised crime groups do target and exploit rural communities, and that's a sad fact of life. It can take many forms. It can be organised plant theft, which we've seen in Dorset very recently, and we've had some really good successes around that, which I'll talk about as well. As you've mentioned, David, livestock theft is another significant crime type. burglaries as well, rural burglaries, isolated communities. People, will target those areas where there's less people about. It's as simple as that. And poaching and hair coursing. A lot of these offences, before I came into this line of work, I didn't realise were linked to organised crime. But the more I hear, the more they are linked, and they fund other crime types. It might be drugs or anything else, but they do fund other crime types, and it is a significant concern for us. But we do tackle it really effectively. We've got really good systems in Dorset Police to tackle that. Really good partnerships regionally. I sit on a regional group where we discuss these issues, and we have regional training, joint operations to tackle this kind of thing. So we are very much on it. Locally, our rural crime team, we've already heard about, focus on victims, offenders, locations and themes. So they are identifying our key victims, locations where crimes are taking place, looking at our themes that are going on nationally, regionally, locally, and also focusing on our main offenders. Also, I think looking at working with our partners is a key area of this, looking at who the lead agency should be, making sure we're all unified in our approach, making sure we're tackling crime together in a collective way, having the best impact, and that makes best use of all of our resources and has the best outcomes longer term. I think just to highlight really the enhanced rural crime team, which was as we said, is now 17 people on that rural crime team, 17 members of staff. In 2022, they seized £1 million, over £1 million in cash and assets. 22 vehicles were seized, 38 arrests were made, 200 plus intelligence logs. So they've had a real impact on this, and seizing that amount of plant equipment, a lot of it and tools, was really significant in tackling organised crime. So I hope that answers your question, Mark. And it is linked up. It always is linked up somewhere, but we got really good processing in the force for tackling that.
And I understand that's happening every day. And actually, I think you've moved on 8 individuals for hair coursing this morning and dispersed them away from Dorset. That's right, isn't it?
That's right, yeah. They Section 35 dispersal orders. We couldn't identify any offences, but we don't just leave it at that. We do something positive and take some robust action, which is deterring people from moving them away from Dorset for 48 hours. And we've recently worked with Hampshire and seized a Land Rover that was stolen from a rural community, and also 3 trailers in the last 24 hours. And they are big money actually, and they have an effect not just on in terms of victims, but people's livelihoods. So yeah, that's something we're really committed to tackling.
Brilliant. Thanks, Andy. Okay, this is from Sandy Armina Ridge. Regarding the recent ITV coverage of illegal hunting, I consider that Dorset Police need to have increased resources to monitor fox hunts, ensure that trails are being laid and that road users are not put at risk of out-of-control hounds. Really good question. Mr. Edwards, would you care to comment on that one for me?
Yeah, of course, yeah, David. Sandy, you're exactly right, and we would absolutely love more resources. There's no getting away from that, and David will say exactly the same, I'm sure. We have to use our resources very carefully. We have to use our resources based on the information and intelligence that we've got at the time. So if we've got information intelligence of beforehand of planned illegal activity, then we do resource that, but we have to target our resources based on threat, risk and harm, which is always a challenge for us because a lot of stuff we deal with is threat, risk and harm, as you can imagine. But this is what I was talking about earlier when you say about ensure that trails have been laid, road users are not put at risk. It's the associated crimes, vehicle damage, antisocial behaviour, that kind of thing that causes some of the problems as well, which we're totally aware of. We do have local officers working across our local policing area, across the force in geographical locations, such as Sherborne, Gillingham, out in the far reaches of Dorset. So we do have coverage there. But yes, we would always like more staff. We would like to monitor every area of illegal activity. Very difficult for us to do, and we have to target our resources where they're most effective.
So, Andy, that issue, particularly about trails being laid and road users being put at risk, that's where you were talking about the civil orders earlier. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we can do that on a criminal behaviour order. We can identify various things we need to put in place to prevent offences, and that's what we try and do. And that then has a power of arrest attached to it, and we can take robust action that way. So there's more than one way to manage it. It's just a case of identifying the right tactic, working with the right partners. And we're you know, in all honesty, these are really difficult offences actually but we'd love to have increased resources, as Sandy has said, and we always do our best to police everything as much as we possibly can.
Okay, and with the new Operation Graphite, that's where you're going to be giving that a greater emphasis, yeah?
That's correct, yeah. We'll give a better level of advice and support for officers that are in attendance and are responding to incidents. They'll have a clearer idea of what action to take at the scene. They'll how to secure and preserve some of that critical evidence.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. So this is from Jade Starmer. How big a problem is stolen machinery to farmers in Dorset? And Gemma, can I come to you about that one?
Yes, you absolutely can. So stolen machinery isn't happening on a daily basis, but we know that the impacts on farm when machinery is stolen are quite huge. This is expensive equipment integral to everyday farming businesses. So when that machinery is taken and does go missing, then obviously it's expensive to replace. It pushes insurance premiums up, and it impacts on kind of the everyday farming job for farmers and the farming community. So it can be a huge issue when it does happen.
Excellent. Thank you. Andy, do you want to add anything?
I think, David, it's really just to focus again on that crime prevention message. You know, don't make it an easy target for thieves. When they do get taken, you know, it's very difficult to get them back. We have had some really significant successes that have really surprised me. We've pulled some of these things off. So we have had some really significant machinery back, tractors, etc., and we are getting those back to victims, not just in Dorset but across the region. So that's part of that £1 million of cash and assets we see. So we are having an impact, but anything the public can do to make it a more challenging target for anybody would be really appreciated, and that'd be the advice we'd give.
So this is from Heather Cameron, and it's how do you collaborate with neighbouring forces to tackle specific issues that may cross borders? So really good question. If I can just talk briefly, one of the most important things to me is that cross-border collaboration, because the crooks don't see the county line. What I've done is sat down with the senior officers in forces and the PCC on our neighbouring borders all round Dorset to basically make certain about that collaboration going forward. And we've got more plans in that regard developing across this year to not just develop the partnerships which we've built here in Dorset, but actually develop them beyond the borders in order to address rural crime. Andy, do you want to talk about specifics?
I think there's probably, for Heather, really, I think there's probably three areas here, Heather. So there's a regional strategic collaboration we have across the regional forces, which I sit on with the neighbouring forces, which is really effective. We share ideas, we look at best practice, we look at themes and how we can tackle issues as a collective, as a collaboration, really. I think then there's the tactical level, which would be at the rural crime team, that they undertake some of the work with the inspectors as a regional joint task and action group meeting where we share information, and we have joint operations like Operation Galileo against the hare courting, which I've mentioned, and that's been really effective. And then there's the operational, which we do go out with other forces and our partners, and we tackle issues. So we know that criminals don't respect boundaries of counties. We know that you know, Dorset, Hampshire, they come across the border into Devon and Cornwall and into Wiltshire and Avon and Somerset. We know that how these people operate. So it's just having that sort of collaboration regionally to tackle that in an effective way. So that is all in place. We do that every single day, Heather. So be reassured about that.
Thank you, Andy. So this is a question from Charlotte Louise. What investment have you made to increase resources in rural crime investigation? So very clearly, the situation before I became PCC was that we had 3 people in the rural crime team. They were very good officers, but it was only 3. And I knew that, for example, North Yorkshire had 21. Sussex had, I think it was 16, and Hampshire 14, or vice versa. So we were significantly underpowered from the point of view of the resources necessary in order to address rural crime and undertake the sort of investigations that Andy has told you about. What I did was I put it as a priority in the police and crime plan. It says very clearly to fight rural crime. And I put it on the Chief Constable's list in order to look at how we were going to make that investment. And that's why we've gone from the 3 officers now to 17 officers in the rural crime team. But also, you've also heard that we've got 17 wildlife officers as well. And that team now has the breadth in order to be able to undertake rural crime investigations. You've heard about the £1 million worth of goods which have been given back. Some of which has been given back to the owners. But we're also able to take the fight in other areas such as the wildlife crime and the heritage crime now. So thank you. Really, really good question. This is a good one. Michael Holland, what are you doing to tackle the youth on off-road bikes? Really good question. I'm aware that this is a problem, particularly on Heathland. So what I'm going to do is ask Andy to talk about what measures the police can take in order to address this.
Yeah, it is an issue, Michael. You're exactly right, and not just in rural communities, but actually, I used to work in the Bournemouth area, and it was an issue there as well on parkland. So it is a significant issue. The risk to people is immense, particularly the people that are riding the bikes and public in the kind of vicinity of it as well. So we know all the issues that it causes. We do try and tackle it. We have powers around seizing of vehicles, providing warnings to people. We do diversion and deterrence away from criminality like this. Clearly, there's no insurance involved, so there are a number of offences which we do tackle when we deal with it. But we've got additional capability now. We've got a drone team in Dorset Police. So if we've got an issue on heathland or a wide expanse of area we can't get to easily, then we can use our drone capability, which is a really new addition and a valuable addition to Dorset Police. We've also got our NPAS helicopter as well. If it's a significant issue and the helicopter is out, we would call them out for that if it's relevant and appropriate to do so and proportionate in all the circumstances. So we have a number of tactics to tackle off-road bikes. A lot of it is educational before we get to the point of offences being committed. But when we need to, we do take robust action. And I've seen bikes seized, taken away by recovery agents on a number of occasions. So we do have some success with this, although there's always more to do.
Well, that's reassuring, Andy, that you'll seize the bikes and actually make that sort of measure if necessary.
Yes.
Thank you for that. So this is a question from Pete Jones. Is heritage crime that much of an issue in Dorset? What is the most common heritage crime? Can I come to you, Sasha?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. We don't have many figures for the rate of crime at the moment, and that's why we're working closely with Dorset Police on doing the training that I mentioned earlier. That heritage crime is happening. It's happening across the country. It's not a huge problem in Dorset, but there are so many protected sites that they can be vulnerable, and because the heritage assets are a shared resource, the impact can be quite great. And so I off-roading is one particular concern, but also metal detecting on a scheduled site. So you need a license to metal detect on a scheduled site, but we wouldn't ever allow a license on a scheduled site. So if you see someone metal detecting, that would be illegal if it's in a protected site. So I suppose that's our most common offences. But again, on several or many of our listed buildings, you get graffiti again, and that is a heritage crime, and the cost to the council to remove graffiti is huge, and so that impacts on everyone. And so often people don't like to see graffiti on some of our really lovely buildings and churches. So again, it's the knock-on effect. You might not think it's huge, but it does impact on the shared resource, which is really important and special, and it's what makes one of the things that makes Dorset really beautiful and lovely. And I think especially in lockdown, people wanted to get out and explore their sort of open spaces, and many of these open spaces are like they are because they have protected special protections around them, and one of those is the scheduled monuments that we've talked about before, and also all of our listed buildings. And so we're working together through Heritage Watch with the police to sort of able to properly record and monitor any offences that are happening and actually sort of bring through the resolution here. Hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you, Sasha. I mean, that was really interesting. I hadn't even thought about metal detectors and that being an issue for you. Yeah, really, 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 really interesting. Thank you. John Maiden. Is the firearms licensing admin coming back to Dorset as the performance via Devon and Cornwall is deplorable? Really good question. Not a surprising one. I've been dealing with this issue for the last year. I can't comment specifically on that. However, there will be an announcement in the very near future. So John, just please hold your water about that. There has been an immense amount of work regarding firearms licensing. I have made significant investments in order to basically start addressing the issue, which I know has been of concern to those who hold firearms in Dorset. And we should have turned the corner by now. But as I say, I can't make an official comment on that at this moment in time, but I will come back to you in the hopefully very near future. Thank you. So this is a question for Sasha from Jack Symes. What is being done about night hawking? Our heritage sites need to be protected.
Well,
Sasha,
we do. Thank you. We do protect them, and we take night hawking, or illegal metal detecting very seriously indeed, specifically on the scheduled site. Night hawking is a term used generally to sort of term sort of unlawful metal detecting, but again there is a knock-on effect, and so people can access land, damage crops, leave gates open, drive onto land, and there is a knock-on effect to livestock, crops, and all of these things. So it's not specifically the theft of what could be termed as treasure, which is a separate issue, but it's the actual act in itself, digging up holes, accessing land without permission from the landowner. Where it's on a scheduled site, again, we have protection to the scheduled site, and we can prosecute. And also, if items are taken that are termed treasure, then they need to be reported as well. So failing to report objects is defined under the terms of the Treasure Act. So again, a prosecutable offence.
Excellent, thank you. And thanks for the clarification around the term. So this is from Debbie Amal Hayati. Warwickshire Rural Crime issued a community protection notice, the Anti-Social Behaviour Crime and Policing Act 2014, to the local hunt, ensuring the hunt to give advance notice of events and details of the times and locations of road crossing points. Why can't Dorset do this to hunts? If they gave advance notice, then you can plan resources. If they're not doing anything illegal, they have nothing to hide. I could not agree with you more, Debbie. That's a really good question. I saw that on social media and I was really interested in it. Andy, do you want to comment on this? This is actually serving a CPN, but it is not, we don't know if it's just happened or if it's in response to a prosecution or how it works. But can it be given anyway without prosecution?
Yeah, we would work in partnership to do this for Debbie. So this wouldn't be something that police would do on their own. We work in partnership. We look at all the information and then we decide what we do from there. But it's a really good point. It's something which we're looking into. I've already mentioned about the civil orders. That's what this is. And, you know, exploring some of those alternative ways of tackling criminality are becoming more and more prevalent. So that is something we're looking into and we will explore as part of our approach to tackling rural crime.
Okay. Andy, so that's something you're looking into. Do you have a sort of time frame for when you can come to a conclusion and be able to use it?
I don't have that, David. No, I think I need to just be mindful of the some of the tasking the team have got at the moment. But it is something we're looking at doing. I think we need to work with our partners and make sure we've got that all planned out first and properly done, and do it once properly if we're going to do something like that. So I think that's something for the future we can look at. It'll be the near future.
Okay, brilliant. All right, I'll look forward to seeing how that develops. So it's another question from Debbie. Under the standards of professional behaviour, it specifies police officers behave in a manner which does not discredit the police service or undermine public confidence in it, whether on or off duty. So why are serving police officers allowed to participate and actually host illegal fox hunts, please? Well, I obviously have a view of that. I do not think that actually hosting illegal fox hunts is something which should be done by anyone. We've just heard that it's illegal. Do you want to talk about that specifically, Andy?
Yeah, certainly. I won't talk about specific people because that would be unfair. But actually, this goes back to the whole issue around hunting and the complexities of the Hunting Act. And actually, is it illegal fox hunting? I think that's the key question. And if it is, Dorset Police are absolutely committed to dealing with it. And if there's issues with our staff, then we're absolutely committed to dealing with that as well. And we've got departments that do deal with that. So be reassured, Debbie, that is the case. But we do need to balance, people's rights to conduct themselves with lawful activity. But when it crosses over into standards of professional behaviour, like you quoted in your question, then yes, Dorset Police are very much committed to dealing with that issue should it arise.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, Andy. Thanks for the question. Okay, so what have you done since becoming PCC to improve rural policing, and what more would you like to do? So I did cover some of this earlier when I talked about the resources for the rural crime team. I think that's one of the biggest wins we've had, is the way that we've turbocharged it. And we've actually changed it from being 3 officers completely run ragged, trying to do everything for the whole of the county, to 17 officers and able to take the fight in different ways to all the facets that we want to deal with. And also having those 17 wildlife officers. And that's really important because they will look at all sorts of wildlife crime. I guess the other thing is the way that the Rural Crime Reduction Board, which looks at things on a quarterly basis, is actually now moving forward and bringing all the partners together. We've heard about the rural resources. I'm keen on the use of drones. I'm keen on making certain that the rural team have whatever they need in order to keep us safe and crime down in the countryside. But there's other facets to the Rural Crime Reduction Board. There is, for example, 4 other threads apart from the rural resource thread. One is Country Watch. You may be aware that we have a new website, and that actually looks at prevention and gives communication about reducing rural crime in our lovely county. We're also looking at what we can do in order to strengthen watches across the county in different ways. We know we have Farm Watch. You've heard about the plan around Heritage Watch. We have other things that we're looking at. We're looking at rural mounted volunteers at this moment in time, and there's a couple of other things that we're going to be looking at in the future. What else? Fly tipping. Well, as you heard, that we have much closer partnership working, and we're trying to make a real difference with that now. You heard about the lobbying. We're taking that forward and really trying to ram it home. And as I say, we've got PCCs across the country climbing on board with our initiative in order to try and achieve that. Wildlife crime. So I'm very keen that we get that right. And we've talked a lot this evening about the issues, but we need to get that right for all sorts of wildlife crime. I know that the hare coursing, we're getting very good at. You've heard a lot about the issues around fox hunting and what we're trying to do to address that. But there are others, even if it's bats being persecuted. And we're at the last Rural Crime Reduction Board. We had a very good presentation from the Dorset Wildlife Trust, which made us aware of the otters which are moving into Dorset and being rewilded here. So there's a number of facets to that particular thread, which we're very keen on. And then there's heritage crime. And so with heritage crime, that's the, if you like, the new boy on the block. You've heard that we've done the training and we've moved that forward. And so where do we go now? I think we strengthen the partnerships. I have asked that the Rural Crime Reduction Board brings on other partners, including some of our ornithological friends, talking about raptor persecution, etc. And I've also got a vision that we can use technology far better going forward in order to protect the rural crime, our rural areas from rural crime. So that's the game plan at this moment in time. So I hope that was quite an explanation, but that's some of the vision that we've got going forward. So is there another question? No, it appears that's it. So what I'm going to do is, with a couple of minutes left, I'm going to ask the partners on this Facebook Live if they'd like to make any comments. What I'll do is I'll start with Andy, I'll go to Gemma, and then go to Sasha. So Andy, do you want to make any final comments?
Yeah, thanks, David. Yeah, just thanks to everybody really for all the questions. Really, really interesting, and people's engagement is fantastic. So that's really appreciated. I think if you're interested in rural crime in Dorset, you've got a lot to look forward to because it's a really exciting time. We've got a revamped team. We've got additional resources in terms of our engagement van. We're out and about in the community. You should be seeing us on Facebook. We've got nearly 17,000 followers. We're strengthening the partnership. We're fully integrated into the Rural Crime Reduction Board. And I think at this point in time, we're looking at really improving the way we do business. So I think actually it's a really good time to be optimistic.
Thank you. Can I come to you, Gemma?
Yes, you can. Thanks very much, David. Just to say, it's a really good partnership thing we're doing with the Rural Crime Reduction Board. The NFU really values being part of it. probably just a reminder for everyone on the call and kind of farmers and growers across the county, prevention is key. So making sure that you're doing all that you can to prevent yourself from becoming a victim of rural crime. And just one thing that we haven't really touched on, but just a reminder of the importance of reporting everything. So we know that the rural crime team have upped their numbers. They're doing some great things in the county now. It's making sure that people across the county, including farmers and growers, are reporting anything suspicious via 101 to make sure that all feeds into the intelligence picture, because we know actually that's how the rural crime team really target their resources and help to prevent crime.
Thank you, and thank you for being here, Gemma. Sasha.
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you for inviting us to be part of this group, and also to pick up on what Gemma was saying about reporting any incidents of what you believe to be heritage crime, and then we're able to take it forward in action. So reporting is the key, and that's how we've been working closely with the police to help. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'd like to thank Andy, Gemma, and Sasha for giving up their time this evening and for helping me in order to talk to you about the partnerships and the Rural Crime Reduction Board and what we're striving to do in Dorset. I'd like to thank you very much for actually looking in and joining us and being so passionate about the things you care about. It's an absolute beautiful county that we live in, and it's important to keep it that way. And the only way we'll do it is by working together in order to address these rural crime issues. So thank you. And we'll continue with the endeavours. Thanks very much indeed.